us tonight, everyone. We're going to get started. Welcome to Second Street Gallery. My name is Kristen Chiacchia. I'm the Executive Director and Chief Curator here. For those of you who do not know, we're a 501c3 nonprofit art space located here right off the downtown mall of Charlottesville, Virginia. We're also here on Instagram Live, so that's why I'm really trying to project so people can hear me. And then we're also going to transcribe the video afterwards with closed captions so that it's easier after the talk. I want to introduce Sarah Boyts Yoder and Tobiah Mundt, who collaborated on this current exhibition here in the gallery called Ditto. So this is the last exhibition of the season 49. So in September we're going to have our 50th year of consecutive exhibitions and programs. So this exhibition came about basically, I had curated a show, I think it was in December 2021, called The Third Mind. It was an exhibition based on Andy Warhol and Jean-Michel Basquiat's collaborative paintings. And Keith Haring, at the time that they were working on these paintings, wrote an article called The Third Mind. And so my idea was to pair artists up in Charlottesville and put them together, and they each created one work of art for an exhibition that I called The Third Mind. Now, Sarah and Tobiah were both in the show, but they were not together. They were both working with someone else. Cut to, we had a gallery rally fundraiser during the exhibition where instead of our normal gallery rally where artists work individually, they were paired up together. And so Tobiah and Sarah both said that they wanted to participate, having been also in the show. And we found out because email, I have receipts for everything, so you can't get anything by me. But so we were wondering who came up with the two of you being together? And what happened was they both said they would do the gallery rally. Tobiah said, who are the artists that still need to be paired up together? And we suggested, I think it might have been Sri, give credit where credit is due, who said, well, what about Sarah Boyts Yoder? And Tobiah said, yes, what about Sarah? And then we connected them, and they did a work during the gallery rally, which is a fundraiser where they have an hour, and they work on one work of art. And let me tell you, that hour for me was so much fun watching the two of them. I actually tried to get the painting. Someone in town, who shall remain nameless, beat me out during the dice roll. They have the painting, but I was so excited to watch the two of you create during this event that I think it was like the next week, reached out to you because I was like, I don't want anyone else to get this idea. I asked you if you would consider doing an exhibition. So that was my long-winded tale of how this show came together. So that was probably in December 2021 that we decided let's do the show. And so, enough of me. Tell me what happened after that? Like when did you start right away? How did you start working on this masterpiece?
First of all, I remember you asked, well, do you want the donate gallery?
Yes,
or the main gallery?
Yes,
the main
gallery.
Right. I think so. We met a couple times and just talked. We knew of each other, but we didn't really know each other well. So we just kind of got to know each other. And I think it may have been like the third meeting we started talking about what we might do for the show.
Yeah, how to approach the bigger concept. So it was like a lot of thinking and writing.
Right.
I have loved your work since I've known about it. It's such a different medium than what I work with, which is paint. And definitely, I think it's pretty obvious. We're instantly connecting about color.
Yeah.
When we talked about that, we talked about it a lot, but in some ways we didn't even really need to talk about it that much because I think we were really similarly oriented towards saturated color, and for you even more so texture and dimension. And I was excited to work with someone in a different medium.
We're both color nerds, so we'll see a color and we'll literally squeal, and that's refreshing because when I do that to other people, they're like,
Ew.
okay. Yeah.
When we were painting this, I think if someone had like a mic, we would constantly like, look.
Right.
Well, I just remember too, one of the meetings that the three of us had in this space where we walked together and, you know, thinking about what we would do with the space. And it was after Francisco Donoso, another artist who visited us from New York City, he had an exhibition here where he painted that, we have a movable 8-foot wall in the gallery, and he painted it a bright yellow. And I suggested, do you want to paint that wall? And they were like, yes, paint. And it was like immediately, you both just, you know, burst out paint. And then you had, and then you asked, will you paint that big wall? And I thought for a second, I was like, well, I could always hire someone to paint it over. I was like, I can always get someone else. Yes. And so, I mean, this was incredible, just having the opportunity. And there is a time-lapse video that you both posted on your social media accounts of just watching, you know, in fast motion the process. But I was very lucky, and then I got to be here for all 3 days, and it was just so interesting watching. So maybe we can talk about the mural a little bit, because Tobiah, you're more known for your fiber work, and you know, how was it working on something so, you know, different for you?
Right. So we knew in the beginning, talking about this exhibition, that we wanted to make the space feel different from anything that we've seen in this gallery yet. So the mural was easy. We knew we wanted to do that. For me, it was fun. At first, like the first shape, I hated, and we painted over it and over it, but it was fun to do something different. I paint all the time, but I never paint. People never see what I paint. But so it was fun. And a lot of it are symbols that have to do with our icon that's in the rest of the show.
Out first, or did you just, okay, these are the colors we picked, come in here, let's just let it happen?
We didn't plan it at all.
I love that.
And we didn't plan colors either, except for that we had a table there with all of our paint on it. And so it was a total, like, just a freestyle.
We knew we were going to use the pink, but that's about it.
Yeah. We both loved, like, the jewel tones, and most of the paint here is, like, translucent or transparent, and so there's a lot of, like, secondary colors that come in that are unexpected, even for us, because where you overlap a lot of the forms, like, you know, a third color comes up. But yeah, we both sort of started with large shapes on either side of the wall, and then, you know, come back and look and sort of try to keep it sort of going back and forth and back and forth. I was saying to people at the opening, like, this you could think of as like a whole song or or opera or a symphony. And then a lot of the other pieces in the exhibition, specifically the small ones, the individual ones, are like the music notes that you would use to build a larger piece.
And it's also a conversation between the two of us and our work. I mean, it's so much.
You can see, like, we're both working with specific symbols, each one, and, you know, a big part of the show was, in a way, illustrating what abstraction can do, which is take a really familiar, really simple form, and through this process of, like, repeating it over and over and over again, really, like, break it out of whatever the original sort of form was. And that's the exciting part to me for painting, and I would imagine for you too, but you can see it in the mural specifically, where there's like a lot of the form that I'm using, which I call like a guide, and then Tobiah's form, which is like a snake serpent form, so you can see it suggested in a lot of shapes that are on the wall, which I really love. And if you can look in, you know, any of the work, and it all is that, but it's different, it changes every time too, which is one of the exciting parts.
I mean, when you were working on it too, I'm just curious, you saw it as a collaboration, you're working, but I have a lot of friends in bands, and I know that sometimes guys, gals in bands, like some work better together than others, and sometimes, you're doing something like you're writing part of the song that, the other person is like, hey, now. Did you ever have any, you can tell us, did you ever have any of those moments where you were working on something and it was like, oh.
Not at all.
No, it was just, oh good.
Not at all. It's very easy to work with Sarah.
Yes.
Yes.
And I could, because, I think we talked about this too, like, it didn't seem like work. You seemed like you were just
Right.
having fun. And I just wanted to hang out. I put my computer out there, I worked out here, I was like, this is fun. But, no, absolutely. And I should also mention that this is a conversation. So, I didn't mention before, please feel free. If you have any questions, we're not going to wait until the end or anything. Like, as the conversation goes on, please wave your hand, shout, whatever. More people come.
There was a lot of, I described it at the opening a lot, so many times where one of us would be like, okay, what if? And then the other person was always like, yeah, love it, let's do it, let's do it. So it was really like a yes and
Right.
kind of thing.
Right.
And I was, said earlier, it was great working with another artist who was, confident with their own style and, their identity, and it was like, there's no hesitating, and that expertise actually makes things more free and more fluid, I find. For myself, and it was true for you too, which is
Yeah.
to say yes and all the time.
Right, and I think Sarah taught me not to overthink things, because I get stuck in concept, and I will write about everything before I start making. And she's so, well, let's do it. I'm like, okay, let's do it. And I love that, and I think I will continue to art that way, because it's freeing, it is freeing.
It's also good to stop and think sometimes too. One of the things, for me as a painter, like I said, I've never done a show that was like this much of an installation, where I was like, not sure how certain things were gonna come out until the very last moment when we got it in here and we did the wall. Like, you couldn't foresee what we were gonna do because we didn't plan it out. The sculpture, and that was a place where Tobiah really pushed her expertise and being like, you can cut this. I mean, I didn't do it, you cut everything. But, that dimensionality, the building part of it was really fun for me to do with a person who already knew it so well. And lean on you for that, because I love it, and I would never have done that.
No, I mean, it seemed like a work in progress throughout
Yeah.
the whole installation, because I would come in and ask, because often with curating shows, I'm very precise. I have my maquette, I cut things out, like everything a certain way, and I would ask, oh, what are you doing? I don't know. It was like, and I think it was because you didn't 100% know either, and there was, at one point, we had 3 different works on that wall, and who's gonna tell her that one of these isn't going in the show? And it was just interesting to watch. And I imagine that if you had another week or 2 to install the show, we would have seen a whole different show.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. So, but I mean, were there parts that were harder than others with collaborating on the show? I mean, couldn't have been all. I mean, not like that you didn't get along or something, but from your own artistic practice, were there things that were, harder to do as a collaborator?
I mean, art making is so intimate and it's really private. Like, the work itself, in a way, even though it's out here for everybody here, but it is a private experience making it. And it's such an exercise in, I think, for me, you have to work on the trust and faith in yourself. And so to put all of that, with another person, I didn't feel scared at all. I was curious, and I felt like free and confident. I mean, so many of these pieces were like, we did the form, cut it out, and then I painted it, and then I just gave it to you.
Right.
Dropped it in your studio, and it was like, okay, do whatever you want, do your thing, and vice versa. Paint over that if you want to, or you can cut that if you want.
Yeah, for me that was the hardest part. Like this piece was the first piece that I added my work to Sarah's work. And I love her work so much that I was like, I think I even texted her, okay, I'm gluing it down. So to glue something on top of her work, that was hard. The first time. And then it's just like, oh, this is what we're doing. It was not a big deal.
And it was all added, a value added to me from my perspective.
Can I ask just a technical question to be? So when you added that piece, was it one long thing and then you composed it as you glued?
As I glued, yeah. And I cut more than half of it off.
Mm-hmm.
It's in my studio now because I didn't want to take over too much.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I have a few questions, but I'll start with one. The title. At what point in creating the work did you have the title? And did it change at all?
Oh, yeah. It changed. I don't think we knew the concept. I don't think we had a title till the middle, and then it changed right at the end.
Yeah, this one came up with like the best word for what we were gonna do. And first we were thinking the title was Echo, and then you texted and you're like, what about Ditto? I was like, oh my God, yes. It's more playful, feels like a more contemporary word, there's more space in that idea. And the idea of repetition is such a huge part of this whole show. I mean, it's kind of the basis. And, I think in the dictionary, under ditto, it says something like basically if an idea or something is deemed like valuable enough to be repeated, then you say ditto. So I like that idea, that there's, value in these original seeds. And then that you can keep repeating them infinitely, and you'll never get the same thing, ever, twice. And that's, it unlocks something instead of freezing it breaks it out of its original shape, which is counterintuitive. But it also, I think it's like, that's what humans do. I mean, that's the human hand. You can, even if as hard as you try, you could never do the same thing, which is beautiful.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm interested in what the space sounded like as you were putting things together. I mean, because it sounds really, it's quiet here. I can hear the outside. And so,
Interesting question.
Yes, you didn't have music on.
We did not have music,
Which
which
was,
is,
I was surprised. You did. I mean,
There was a ladder playing around.
Yes.
We were moving the ladders and going up and down.
there was color squealing.
yes, it's a lot of conversation. It shouldn't
Yes.
feel at any point quiet.
We talked a lot.
We talked
Yeah.
a lot, and we learned a lot about each other, I think, yeah, I wouldn't change that part.
I mean,
Right.
it's like parallel play in a way. If you're, and I actually in my studio I find this. I don't do it often, but if I'm talking on the phone to someone and I'm working, I've made some of my most favorite paintings like that. Because you're just you're skimming, but you're also like really deep in at the same time.
Right.
And I think that happens having this much time together in here. We could pick up the question that we had for one another and answer, from 30 minutes before.
Right.
And there wasn't like all this other noise that had gotten in the way.
Yeah, in a way, it's like our conversation distracted ourselves from the work, which enhanced the work, I think.
Yeah. That's the secret. It's like eating, like tuned in and zoned out enough at the same time to catch, like, I always say, like, to catch what's on the periphery, because those are always the most interesting in the end parts that you didn't try so hard to get, but we let them kind of discover them.
And is that how you usually work in your studio? Do you usually put music or the television or a podcast or something on, or do you usually work? So this is very different from that.
It's very different because I work alone.
Yes.
But it depends on the day. Sometimes there's a podcast, sometimes there's music. Music is a huge part of my process in the beginning. But like towards the middle and end, it might be quiet. It just depends.
And then when the air conditioner kicked on, it made this move.
Right.
And then everything was, in motion.
And Derek, you had another question.
I do.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like I'll probably ask both of you independently this question, but now seeing your work together, how do you know when a piece is done? Like, especially this wall, like how did you know? I think it's hard enough to make the decision when you're a solo art and then you're working on a piece by itself, but then when you have two people, how do you know what was done?
Just know.
You just know.
Yeah. I think we both knew that black was the last color. And when it was balanced, it was balanced. Right?
Yeah. I think I loved this scale and like this part of the show because there was a decent amount of, it wasn't composing in a formal way, but we did know that in some ways this was going to be like a backdrop. It's a piece, but it's also a backdrop for a lot of other pieces or people or moments or something. So I think we did consider some formal things, like is it balanced? Do we have enough light and dark over here, color-wise? But then like any artist in here would probably say it comes down to this feeling of, to me, it's always recognition. Like, oh, I recognize, like have this feeling of recognizing something, but I've never seen it before. And that's like the most interesting part about making art, I think.
Right.
But I think to me even there was an added challenge to this, whereas it wasn't just is the mural done, but then you had to place, you were placing this work on top of it, so you had to think about that as you were creating the work. And I think this piece was to the show, and I mean depending on, again, with these three pieces, they would look totally different on a different mural or a different color wall and a white wall. So I just think, that was just yet another layer, another challenge that you had to, where you had to have been thinking about that, but maybe not with this piece because this piece was brand new as you were installing.
The mirror was here in the middle before, just the mirror. But we didn't like the way it looked. Something about all the colors around those colors dulled the mirror.
It felt very dark and dull.
So we put it over there.
Who's gonna tell her?
Yeah.
That was a fun part too, to work with somebody who was, I think in the security and in your identity and your work that you have, because you've been working over time, and it was like, you're so open to improvising, and like, improvising for fun, but also to solve problems, is something, I like doing, sort of the fun challenge when it happens, and when the person you're working with is also like, let's go for it. Let's change it totally, that's exciting.
I don't know if this is so much it is a question sort of, but I'd love to hear each of you talk about the color pink and like why it's so important in your work and what it means. And maybe it changes, but.
I can't stay away from it, and I don't even like, I'm not like a colorful dresser or anything but it's like, it's a magnetic color to me. And I think everybody talks about this, it's also like an ancient color, actually. You know, it's such a natural color, it feels, so I think it has this, like, because of Barbie. There's like a pink paint shortage in the world because of Barbie movie for real. But it seems like this artificialness, like frosting or bubblegum-ness. But to me, it's always this very like
Nature.
it's like nature. You know, I think like you guys think this is bright. Look outside. Like look at this world. You know, and it's energetic.
It's energetic, it's powerful, you can't not see that wall, right? If that wall were like dark green, you just walk past it and sit down, but.
I saw it driving down the street today. I was like, whoa, you can see that from across the railroad tracks.
I don't like calling attention to myself, but to my work, sure. So yeah, it's fun and joyful. You can't not smile in front of that wall. So
It also interacts so well with a lot of other colors, and with paint, like with the medium acrylic paint, it really varies depending on the brand, the type. You know, there's like the liquid acrylic, there's heavier, so it's almost always translucent, and I really like that. I love using it for that reason, because it either sometimes it, you know, if it's purely by itself on a surface, it is like the most, but then it like really disappears and turns into this weird color if you overlay it, you know, on green or turquoise right there. It's this crazy purple, you know. It's really interactive. And a lot of people said at the show, like, this feels really energetic in here, or like electric, or
Vibrating. Yes, that wall is vibrating.
to do with it.
I'm curious to know more about this work that's very different from anything that I've seen from either of you. So I was wondering what the inspiration behind that. And this was also work that changed as you were installing it.
yeah. So I knew when we came in here and the gallery was empty that I think we both knew we wanted to do an installation and do something different. I really like making people walk around something, and I wanted something that would be in the way, so that it's not just work on the walls, there's something that makes you stop. But it became more than that because it's translucent and you can see this behind it, you can see the work on the wall, on this wall behind it. So I feel like it's all a conversation, and it's also, parts of our symbol.
Yes.
The symbols.
Similarly to the pieces on wood here, for example, I drew the shape for that piece, and the piece that you can't see but it's in the office and you can peek at it, you drew that shape. And then we together drew the shape for that one. And the same thing with this acrylic sheeting, we drew, each of us took turns drawing a shape, and then we cut it out. Thank God. But
Where? Like, and how? Like, it's such a big thing. Just on, with a jigsaw, on, what are those things called?
sawhorses. But I'm like, what's a jigsaw? You can order acrylic sheets. Oh, look, you know. Yeah. And there's some cool pictures of you cutting the wood, but that was a gift. Like someone who's familiar with materials like this, for me, who's not. But that's how that came up. And at first we wanted there to be another piece on the floor and some other, not other elements, but more of those. And then it was like, we were putting it in here and it was like, oh, it's a column, it's a totem, it's a, you know, a thing that looks great as that instead of adding more to it.
And what was the motivation behind your, well, not only your color choice, but also not including, because you painted part of it, you didn't paint all of them. just happened, or
Yeah, I feel like that, the painting of that one just happened, you know?
That was an improvised move.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And,
Actually, it's connected to these behind us because we made these at the very end, right before we finished installing, pretty much. But one of our like brainstorming, problem-solving scenarios at the studio was like, I don't know if it was like we have an extra sheet or we need to cut one down for some reason, and it was one of those what if moments. It was like, what if? Paint it on the back, and then like an on sheet, and those you really built the dimension up with the wool tufted parts. So there's a connection between these on the wall and the painting on the acrylic that one. But I'm glad that they don't all have that on there.
Can you guys talk about your relationship to shapes and symbols? I don't know if it's the same for both of you. It's in like 3 different mediums here.
yeah, so, in choosing the concept of ditto, we both chose an icon or a symbol. Mine's a snake.
And mine's a guide, like a figure, the head of a figure.
So everything I've done in here is an abstraction of a snake, either zoomed in or abstracted or zoomed out. This piece is like the most realistic, but I didn't want to like put an actual snake head.
That's also, you know, I think we also wanted this show to be about abstraction. The symbols, choosing one and repeating it so often, really can illustrate what abstraction can do, which is sort of what I said earlier, which is break a thing out of its stuck form or simple form, and it can become animated and elastic and flexible, and yet retain this really elemental kind of core that's really familiar. And I love that exercise, me personally, because it's like that's how I want to be myself. You know, it's like a singular form who can be flexible and yielding when I need to be, and have fluidity and change, get big, get really small, interact, you know. And that is, it's useful to pick a thing. And it goes against, I think, what we're often taught as artists, which is you can't repeat yourself. You have to do something new every time. And I actually think it's easier to do something new every time. It's easier to do that than it is to find what's new in something that's so familiar.
And I also feel like the repeating the symbol, it amplifies its meaning. So, you know, every single time I did it, it gets stronger.
So along those lines, and maybe you've answered this already, but online, did you both find that you were drawn to any particular shapes, forms in this project? Obviously, yes. Or in general, and then love your work and show in this discussion so much. But maybe along the lines of how did this one, before you started repeating it, how did you pick this symbol or the few that you have?
So for me, the snake has a lot of personal meaning, but also culturally, I mean, it's just, there's so much. I mean, it means rebirth, transformation. I love that a snake sheds its skin 3 or 4 times a year. It means that, you know, we get to grow, we get to change, and I love that. So that's why I chose the snake.
And my symbol is one I've been working with for probably 10 or 11 years now. And it's from, you know, my kids are here, they're gonna be so embarrassed. But my big kids are here, but when they were little and tiny, and there wasn't space in my life as an artist to work very much, I was really like looking at my world with this very kind of like hungry gaze, and for things I could use or think about. Sometimes that's all you can do. And I found this image in a kid's book. You know, kids' illustration is really clever, it's funny, it's colorful. It's, I think, what abstraction also is good at or tries to do, which is like communicate the most amount of information to the most people in the least amount of time. And we were reading a book, and it was an image of a woman, and it was actually a book about Georgia O'Keeffe. So she's looking out of a window, and my brain was just like, you know, that's it. You know, now I would say, like, my brain recognized it as a vehicle for all of this. And that was, 11 years ago, and I haven't been tired of going back to that form this whole time. It's like unveiling itself as something new all the time. And it's a familiar thing to go back to and start with. Like I'm saying, it's a guide like a figure, but it also is a guide like how to make something in your studio when you don't know what to do, or you only have 20 minutes, or you only have an hour. And there's a lot of, I think, and this is like the motion you're making in your movements in your work too, of like muscle memory,
Right.
and movement, and that's another thing, like you can unlock a lot of natural, I think, grace and motion and something through that. I think you can see it literally in a lot of your work, but in Mark's also, I hope, in mine too. So a simple place, but that's what the world is. It's lots of simple things that we can make into other things.
So whose idea was the mirror for the?
Mine, I like working with mirrors for lots of reasons. It's the same reason that there are eyes in some of my pieces. I want the viewer to see themselves in the work. Like, and this is just like
Literally, yeah.
But like for the eyes, it's like an invitation to allow yourself to grow, allow yourself to shed what is not serving you. So the eyes are your eyes. It's a reflection of you.
Do we have any other, before I continue with mine, do we have any other audience questions?
Wet felting?
Yes,
Like,
yeah,
how
because
is
there's
wet
a few.
felting different from dry, other than, obviously it's probably wet, but where does the wet come in and how?
Okay, so my, what's the thing called? The family
Studio Day
Oh.
on Saturday, June 17th.
So on
To
the
be able to-
family studio day,
Yes.
I will be demonstrating. wet
And
felting.
we encourage all ages. Families are families of young children, families of your chosen family, your friends, every age, you're all welcome to come and participate. But to piggyback on the wet felting question, I'm also curious too, when I first started seeing your work, you were doing the needle felting, and there is no needle felting in this show. So what made you decide to do the wet felting and the tufting, and was that what led to that choice? Because it seems very specific that
Yes.
you
So
excluded that.
if you don't know my work, needle felting is like how I realized that I was an artist. And so the tufting came about because I love color. And when I needle felt, I usually only use the white wool. Sometimes I dye it, but I just really like the way it looks when it's just white. The wet felting came in. I just wanted I had to have some felting in the show. So it's done with hot water, hot soapy water, and wool, and that's it. And the more you agitate the wool, the stiffer it becomes, the more dense it becomes. So we will make snakes on the 17th. It's going to be messy, but fun.
I'll be in California, so I'll be far away from the mess.
And the mess is hot soapy water.
Are you bringing a snake friend?
No, I do not.
Do you have a snake?
I don't. I would never have a snake. I mean, they should be free.
Yes. No snakes at Second Street. But what, and you were saying, so with the tufting, it allows wool that you're using and the tufting, that's, for this show, you didn't dye any of that yourself,
No,
it's all.
not for the show. Yeah, this is all yarn, so it's already dyed yarn for tufting. And I didn't do any needle felting because the majority of my work right now with needle felting is faces. Like I love to do faces, so it just didn't fit. I thought I tried to make it work, but it just didn't fit.
Well, we get to see a whole other side of,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
of your work. She doesn't just do it. Exactly. Was there any? Can I ask some of my harder questions? To be here. Well, I'm always curious. What? Was there a question?
Oh, you saw my.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here. And I don't know your name, but I'm thinking about what you asked. Oh, hi. Just about what it sounded like to be together. And just the confirmation that, of course, it sounds like something, both to hear you talk about being together in the work, it was so alive. I was thinking about like whether or not there was anything that you didn't get to hear from each other, you know, or if there were questions or curiosities or things that just are still in you now that you wanted to play with or try together or hear during that time. Like outstanding things that are just still wanting to be opened up.
Well, I think there were a lot of ideas and projects that we started that we did not use. So I think there's more conversation.
It definitely does feel like the start of, not like literally, you know, the start of the next show or something, but I do feel like the start of like, you know, a friendship and a relationship, and it doesn't feel rushed. Like that's one of the things I feel from you is like the, you know, like calmness and like thoughtfulness and like looking at something for a long time and thinking about it. That's valuable to me, and it feels like there's space there to keep asking the things that I am curious about, but it doesn't feel forced or rushed. And I don't know, that to me also is about like a respect for when somebody wants to talk about something, or you know, you learn better questions to ask the more you're, you know, talking. So it feels like a fertile ground.
Right. I also never asked another artist, what do you think about this? That's never happened. So like being able to text Sarah, even though it's work that we did together, I think that I will feel very comfortable in the future, like with my own projects, texting you and being like, what do you think about this? And knowing that she's going to be honest and not just, yeah.
And have context
Right.
for a lot of those questions, both because we work together, but also just because it's now another amazing artist that you know, like, in a closer way.
But I think that was something too in watching the two of you work together on this exhibition that excited me, and something that, you know, I often, you know, try to pride myself in at Second Street is being, you know, a good connector of people, and then, you know, introducing people and setting up these relationships, and then kind of like be free and go, you know, out into the world and continue. So it was great to hear like, oh, we could do this, but next show, or like that this isn't a conversation that on July 21st when the show ends, that's like the end of the chapter. It's like just the beginning, it sounds, of, you know, the two of you continuing to have these conversations.
If anything, I'll be like texting you like, oh, I remember this color.
Can you believe this? So I know you guys have been working on this for so long, since like September, August, maybe even sooner than that of last year. So wondering, do either of you or both of you have any sort of like post-installation or post-exhibition blues?
So we haven't been working that long. We've been talking. We've been talking that long. No. Maybe when it comes down, I feel relief
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. I think it's sort of like you're sort of geared up in this gear, your mind, we talked about this, like your mind is in create mode, and then you have to kind of like taper that off so that you can be in like logistics mode. Like, I have to put screws on this, or, you know, how am I gonna hang it? You know, I need to finish this thing. Those aren't always the fun things to do. So you kind of like coast out of the more high key good parts. But yeah.
But
it's
is
a
it going to
thing.
be-
Well, I was gonna say too, sometimes, and I sense it here, and I bet you agree, like, you're so in the midst of making a thing, and then you almost like wake up and you're like, whoa, do we make that? I don't know. I still don't know if we made all this stuff.
Right. For me, that's refreshing to hear because I do that often.
Mm-hmm.
Like even in my studio, I look at something, I have no memory.
But is there some aspect that, you know, not every part, this mural isn't permanent, you know, there's something that you worked together, I mean, it was like over the course of 5 days, and you created this thing, and then in late July, you're gonna come with that white paint and paint over it. I mean, it's like, Jess, who works here at the gallery with us, you know, as soon as they saw the mural, just said, I'm already mourning its loss, like when we have to paint over it. I mean, is there something, because not everything in this show is permanent, does that change anything, or make you feel a certain way, or is it like, we'll do another one?
No, we'll do another one. I mean, yeah, I think we've already been asked to do another smaller thing. So I think it's not, and we knew it wasn't permanent,
Yes.
so that's different.
Yeah, and that's a really different space to be making something than in your studio, for me, like on canvas. I love it. It feels really free. And it's like, it's the abundance mindset for me. That's the part that I really like. It's like, do what you feel. What do you want to do? Like, there's more where that came from. You know, there's always more. And it's not always easy to access it, but you know the way to get to it. So it'll be sad, but it won't be. It's just another chance to do things.
So you mentioned that, you know, you've already been asked to do something. What is next for both of you as far as, you know, you have this show, are you planning for another exhibition? Do you have anything coming up? Do you need a break? Are you already back in the studio working? Well, you're working all the time.
Yeah. For me, this is my first time working as a full-time artist, so I'm excited for everything that's next. I have ideas. I will definitely be doing more needle felting and some clay. So
We're very excited.
because she suggested it.
I love it.
It's like, oh my God, you should look at this. Yeah, it's a good exchange of ideas. I have another show coming up in July in Nashville.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, I'm just working, but it's a good, summertime is also a rest time, and it feels good to do that and not be in the studio every day and like recharge. So September feels like New Year's in a way. We're all in school. And then that's like a refreshing time. So now it's sort of like, we did all the work, we can chill. Yeah.
Do we have any other? Well, this has been a great conversation. I thank you both for, you know, trusting me when I asked you to do this.
Thanks for letting us do this.
And letting,
She said yes too.
Yeah,
We
I
were
said yes
also,
too, yeah.
we're like, what if? And you're like, yes.
Yes. You know, I'm a lot more easygoing than a lot of people in town say. Right? My colleague laughs. Were there any other final questions or anything? I think as we end the conversation, if you want to look around the show a little bit, I'm sure you'll stick around for a little bit and answer any questions. But did we have any other questions for our official before we say goodbye? All right. The end. Turn that off. Thank you.